All right, good evening. We are here at one, which will be one of many post-budget forums over the next couple of weeks as we analyze budget 2019-2020. Right now we are at the Passage of Asia in Chaguanas, where the Chaguanas Chamber of Industry and Commerce held their post-budget analysis. Very interesting comments came out of the meeting, but one of the sore points, as I think every budget, would be the issue of allocation for agriculture and diversification. Now, we had a chance to speak with three of the panelists today. Dr. Indira Sajiwan Ali, economist. We spoke to the Minister of Trade and Industry, Paula Gopi-Skun, and we also spoke to former Minister of Energy, Mr. Kevin Ramnarine. You mentioned about the acquisition of course, OWTU in the refinery. How optimistic are you that they can turn things around? I had Mr. Ozzy Warwick on the program, and he said that, listen, the resources are there. So are you optimistic that they can turn things around?
Well, it's left to be seen. I would hope that they would draw from the pool of talent that existed in Petrotrin, which was quite significant. Prior to the close of the refinery, there were many highly qualified people and so on who had many decades of experience in running a refinery. I think where the question mark arises is in the monies that would be required to start the refinery and to run it, for a couple of months, which would be, we have varying estimates between 300 to 500 million US dollars. So where's that working capital going to come from? But I think at the end of the day...
So they have great investors, that's what they say.
Well, and they said that they will reveal those investors in due time. So we wait to see.
Right.
But it is in the national interest for the refinery to be restarted and to be run efficiently and profitably and in a safe manner.
Thank you very much, sir. The head of the Sheep and Goat Farm Association, Shiraz Khan, he is very vocal about how he feels about agriculture. And he sort of alluded to the fact that it's like another chicken feed allocation. So you mentioned before that, there are incentives to agriculture that is not on the back burner, but yet, and this is not a P&M thing. It seems as though diversification has just been a talk shop for many, and people are not seeing it really bearing fruit, no pun intended. Can you give us some detail to satisfy, the concerns of the farm population and so forth, as to what is this diversification you're speaking about?
Okay, so let me just speak a little bit about diversification. People have always said this country is not diversified. You have to remember that we were originally an agriculture economy. Then we went to oil, then we went to gas, then we went to manufacturing. And it's very, very clear that we can't continue to rely only on energy, and of course the petrochemical sector, because we are subject to international pricing and therefore the price shocks that comes with it and that kind of thing. The vulnerabilities are there. Very evident that we must further diversify, and agriculture is one of them. Now, the contribution of GDP for agriculture is very, very, very low. It takes more than incentivization to get that industry going. It takes a country to recognize and for people to recognize the value in doing agriculture and to change our mindsets. You got to recall that Trinidadians and Tobagonians have gotten used a particular kind of revenue streams coming from the energy sector, so we've been spoiled. We need to go back into agriculture.
So let me stick up in. So do you believe that people are saying this with their lips that they're ready, but with their heart they maybe not?
You've got to take the plunge, and it requires a change in the mindset and in the attitudes and so on to see the relevance of it, to cut down our food import bill, to eat what we grow, to manufacture enough to process for exports. So it's there and it's waiting. Many countries have done it.
They mentioned Finland.
Many countries have done it. And within South America, within Central America as well. There are many countries, Guatemala, Costa Rica, many countries that are doing very well in cocoa and other products, and they are exporting. So, as I said, it requires a change in mindset. We've always had a wide plethora of incentives for the sector, for agriculture. We've gone the way now where we are saying for registered farmers, absolutely no tax on inputs and no corporation tax also for registered farmers involved in primary production and also involved in processing of these primary products, of products grown here. I mean, it really falls to the population and those who are more inclined that way to look at the prospects. And there are persons who, in fact, do have agricultural lands, and they really have not taken full advantage and haven't delved into it as they should. So the encouragement is there. The Minister of Agriculture has also spoken about managing and modernizing the whole land administration, and so that there's money set aside in the budget for that. You know, the monies that the amount that you spoke about, I think it would have been about 700
million or something like that. 7.4.
I think it would have been about 700 million, but that's only the recurrent expenditure. There is also in the PSIP for projects, so that's not all that is there, and the incentives are there as well.
Do you believe that? Again, and I'm listening to what you're saying, and I do agree what you're saying, but again, we're looking at a discussion that has spanned more than 2 decades. What is the stumbling block in changing the mindset? Because people are saying, listen, give us 3 billion, give us 4 billion. We they give you the plans. Mr. Shiraskan also made the point at when they had their breakfast budget their post-budget conference that it's big business. They're looking to increase the export bill.
And it is big business, and there are a number of there are a number of large enterprises, commercial enterprises that have gone into it. We have a significant poultry sector in Trinidad, and I know that there are a number of large commercial projects that are underway. For instance, there is going to be a parboiling rice plant. I know that Minister has given lands for that. There's a new hatchery that is on its way. There's been the Aripo livestock station has been privatized. I know that there is increased rabbit production for export, and so that there are a number of things on the way. I think the interest is there. The Minister has created a lot of interest, I think, and we have to be positive and open-minded and to see that there's money in it as well. So it's there. It's exciting. Agriculture it's an opportunity. And it really calls for the population to start seeing the benefit and getting into it. The incentives are there.
Good evening, Dr. Indira Sejuwanali. How are you doing this evening? I really enjoyed your presentation for the mere fact that you said something there, and I had this conversation earlier today concerning the minimum wage. And I was asking the question to someone that says funny. I said, with the minimum wage, there will be, normally when gas prices go up, there's a domino effect that takes place. When I heard the minimum wage went up, I said to myself, there'll be another domino effect, because with the having to pay out more, you will see some businesses raising their prices. The Consumer Affairs Division, they're supposed to be the body to regulate these things. And over the years, we see people unscrupulous raising prices whenever they feel like it, however they feel like it. Why can't we seem to plug this crater that seems to be eating away at the purse of the nation? What's the point of the division if we cannot regulate prices? Because as you said that, it means that come Christmas, they're going to raise it and nobody's going to say anything. Why can't we get this right?
Well, we live in a democracy, so the issue of regulating prices is not something that go hand in hand with a democracy, okay? The issue is if you increase the cost of doing business for an enterprise, the enterprise has to make a choice. It has to make a choice if the capacity exists to pass it on to consumers if they believe that people have the purchasing power to have a higher price, or if not, then they have to make a decision to absorb it. So, I mean, we are in a free market environment where that is going to happen. So that it will not be surprising to see this increase in minimum wages. Remember, it's not just minimum wage, it's increased salaries to CPEP workers and URP. It is also increased salary to OJT. So it's a number of places where increases salaries have happened. But there's another very important point. The issue of the trickle effect of this move, because if the minister was careful to link these increases to the fact that productivity has increased, and it's legitimate. If my productivity has increased, then I have a legitimate right to have a larger part of that pie. But then what about the unions? What about the teachers and the public servants who have already started to agitate? So could the minister have inadvertently now brought on a hornet's nest upon himself in terms with respect to this particular action because of that kind of trickle effect?
How do we level the playing field then? When I say level in the context of, and I hear everything that you're saying, but you made the point that, in one breath they're smiling, and then, so how do we now reassure citizens, listen, there is a way whereby you can manage your so-called increase despite whatever else is happening around you in the country? How do we do that?
Yeah, how we do that is, as individuals, we take responsibility for how we spend our money and what we spend our money on. So that if you go to the grocery and you look at a piece of cheese, for example, and yesterday when you went, you saw that the price was $15 for a similar size, and you come today and you see it's $25, you have to make a decision.
It boils down to the consumer.
It boils down to the consumer. And if you make the decision that I am not prepared to pay that price, then the cheese will sit on the shelf and it will rot.
And I've seen in countries where that kind of action that has actually forced businesses to maintain their price.
And for me, it is even more than that. It is to do with the whole issue of import substitution, import replacement. It upsets me to no end when I see individuals buying imported avocados. We have a season where we have avocados. Let's enjoy it during that season. And when that is out of season, let us enjoy what else comes into season. And it upsets me even more because the price is not cheap for the imported avocados. And more often than not, when you buy it and you cut into it, it's rotted. So that, again, it continues to happen, which means that as consumers, we are continuing to fuel that importation. So the power really lies in our hand. I don't think we necessarily need a consumer authority to regulate price from that perspective. We need to regulate our own selves in terms of what we buy. I go to the markets. I make the choice that I will not buy my vegetables, for example, in the supermarket where I might buy my dry goods. I go to the Tunapuna market or the farmers market in Chaguanas or the farmers market in Santa Cruz, in order to be able to get the best prices that I can. And I think that is the kind of approach people have to make if you are in a situation where your income needs to be stretched.
The Consumer Affairs Division, for those who are looking on that and they're probably not aware, because you don't really see much information about them lately. For those who are looking on that and just listen, I'm not aware of the guidelines of this division. What do you say to them briefly so they will understand clearly what they can and cannot do?
But I think the role of the consumer agency, that government agency, is that if you, for example, if you feel that what you have paid for and what you get, if what you get is a substandard product relative to what you pay for, then you have grounds to go to the consumer division in order to ask them to intervene and address that. So if you buy a piece of fabric, for example, a piece of clothing that gives you certain guarantees, and then when you follow those instructions and you use it, the material falls apart, it starts to thread, whatever, you have grounds on which to invoke the assistance of the consumer.
My last question, Finland, and I was speaking to the minister earlier on, and Shiraz Khan also made the point about the food import bill. He made accusations that, listen, the government is standing to make billions of dollars off of their quote-unquote friends, and they're suppressing the local market. How do we keep dancing around this issue with agriculture. Yes, I'm hearing we're diversifying, and she mentioned different incentives, but it is not satisfying to the farmers out there. How do we truly address this situation when it comes to diversification? Because quite frankly, it seems as though we have not made that a top priority. And it's not a very large scale.
And with respect to the issue of agriculture, there's been a slew of incentives on the cards for a long time. The challenges, the bureaucratic challenges that farmers have in terms of going and filling out the forms and actually the length of time it takes in order to get the incentive. So that's one thing. The second thing is very often these incentives require that you have land tenure. And land tenure continues to be one of the largest challenge that is facing farmers. A lot of them are growing crops on land that they do not have. Irrigation is another major challenge that they face, the issue of flooding. And if we talk about the issue of flooding, to me the solution has to be technology-driven agriculture. We're a small island space where houses are competing with produce for land space. And therefore we need to redefine the model. But we need to make a decision what we want it to look like. It comes back to what I said on the platform. We need to consider the agricultural sector. We need to determine what are the things that we are going to produce just to sell at the market, at the stand for individual consumption, and what are the things we're going to produce for export. And then we need to produce at the scale we need, and we need to put the measures in place in order to allow those things to happen. We need to bring in technology that's required, and we need to bring it in at the scale that is required.
And this will require spending money, and that's what they're saying. Why these constant chicken feed quota allocation?
Allocation, and most of what is allocated to the agricultural sector really is for recurrent expenditure. There's very little money in there for capital investment, but try to find creative ways to allow the farmers to come together, maybe in cooperatives, for example, and be able to borrow money through the ADB in order to be able to do that. But if you don't do technology at a scale, then we won't have the incentive to ensure that you have the technical people skilled up in order to deal with it. So we had a time when there was some incentives for greenhouse farming. Some people did go into it, but what happened is that they started to have challenges with the greenhouse farming, and we didn't have the technical expertise in the country in order to address it. If you want to do it, you have to do it at a significant enough scale so that it can work hand in hand. Jamaica is a good case in point of a country that is really moving forward in terms of redefining its agricultural sector, advertising it in a very, very attractive way, and really going about the business of getting it right.